Hey guys, this is my video response for the Laramie Project. So, Laramie Project is about was about a brutal murder that happened in a town called Laramie. It was about a very homosexual man named Matthew Shepard, and he was brutally murdered by two men. And this is a story that really reflects on how it happened, and it's kind of an unorthodox setup, really, because it's not really a regular script or a regular play because it's made by a person who did loads of research by Kaufman who basically wrote the entire play based on 400 different interviews that they did. And so there's many numerous values throughout the entire thing by the people who are against homosexuality and people who can relate to it. And so one of them is by the Reverend Fred Phelps, who holds a funeral for Matthew, and probably at the worst time is when he argues that God hates homosexuals, and he just says that like this was okay, and just saying even though a murder happened, he's saying how homosexuals is not okay in this world. And also one good value throughout the book is even though the two boys had murdered his son Matthew's father says that is very against death penalty and says that these two boys do not deserve to die. And so one saying I didn't know was, and I thought was really cool, was "live and let live." I've heard it before, but I didn't know it exactly. So this is just like in this example for homosexuals, for people who don't agree with it, they should just let those people live and not judge them in any way or try to make their life any worse because they're just living their life just like you. And so the way they depicted the town of Laramie was very interesting. It was kind of like every other town actually, because there's going to be people who don't agree with you and people who don't agree with your views and things like that. And with such a polarizing topic such as homosexuality, there's going to be people on this side of the spectrum and the other, where people agree with it and people who are very highly against it, as we can see with these two men who just brutally murdered Matthew Shepard. And so obviously it was such a rash situation, and every city really, because I think even Columbus was such a big market and things like that. There's going to be so many people who agree and disagree on this certain topic. So I think even in a city like this, it's possible that something like this could happen, which is very sad to hear. And so the differences between the Laramie Project and Intimate Apparel, well, number one is obviously this one, like I said before, is comprised of 400 interviews, and which is obviously very unorthodox. And each individual scene is very magnified with how everything happens, which increases the meaning with each scene, which I thought was really cool. And obviously, it's more of a documentary of how everything happened with Matthew Shepard and then the aftermath of everything like that. And so my two questions were: do you think that the two boys deserve the death penalty for murdering Matthew Shepard? And my second question is: do you think that these situations will happen now and in the future?